innovation doesn't happen in silo. It happens when you're actually in it. Innovation should not be the next thing that I've never heard of. It happens out of pain and learnings that you're experiencing in the day-to-day job. I know less about marketing today than I did yesterday because there's been 10 other things that happened today that I haven't even caught on.
Completely agree.
To be able to progress, you need that sense of curiosity that you can't just rely on the same tools, the same toolbox that you've had before. I always like to say I joined for the right reasons and I left for the right reasons.
Let me ask you this question, though. Had that soccer game gone into extra time, would you have sent me a note saying, Vic, I've got to watch the extra time and the penalty shootout? And we're referring to Morocco and France right now. Because I have, would you have sent me a note saying that?
I would have called in sick.
You would have called in sick. I was saying that to my wife because she's been watching every game. And I said, Basil's a big football fan. He's an Arsenal fan. And I'm pretty sure that if there's some sort of rally from Morocco, we might have to table this to another day. So, I mean, like you, I was pulling for Morocco. Sorry that it happened, but I'm glad we get this in. So, Basil Hatto, thank you so much for stopping by today. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Me too as well. Thank you for having me on.
So let's start with where you are right now. So we've been working together for the last couple of years on the CMA's Ad Tech Committee, but your day job, what pays the bills, is you are the SVP of Product at NP Digital. So tell us what NP Digital is and what your role as the SVP of Product entails.
Yeah, I've had so many jobs. Probably will cover it even on this call as well. But I'll start by saying probably NP Digital is the most unique place I've ever worked. And it's a global performance marketing agency in the normal sense. But what's unique about it is the way it goes on about sharing marketing and evangelizing what the space and where the space is heading. So what I do day to day, my role is basically stitching data, technology, strategy together to make sense of how a brand can succeed. And I spend a lot of my day building solutions that basically solve specific problems for clients. So I really like the idea of, it's a bit of an engineering, a bit of strategy, a bit of data, a bit of SEO, a bit of UX and customer experience understanding, and processing all that in something that is like, think of it as a brand operating system, and then trying to work with clients to solve for their complex problems. It's a mix of rigorous data, and I love that, and future-proofing business as well, which I find a lot of fun.
Well, we're going to come back to that in a bit, Basil. So as always, we start from the beginning. I knew you were Jordanian. I had no idea that you were raised in Cyprus.
Yeah, well, background,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they hear me speak, sometimes they're like, you're from the Middle East. I come from a mixed Arab and Greek background, and growing up, I pretty much split my life, school in Jordan, summers in Cyprus. And eventually, when you spend your formidable years moving between some very different cities and very different cultures and different social norms, I really enjoyed that because it really helps you think differently. I grew up in Jordan, was born in Amman.
So why the summers in Cyprus and just not the summers as well in Jordan? Or why not the flip-flop as well too? Like, why not do the summers in Jordan and do schooling in Cyprus?
I mean, there's this unique thing in Cyprus called the beach. And
there we go. We should note that it's an island nation.
It is an island nation. And when growing up, I always had this association, summer is a beach. And growing up in Amman, you don't really have access to that as much. But eventually, I do want to clarify, like I finished my high school in Cyprus. So I ended up moving to Cyprus later on in my life and finished my high school there, and then lived there for 2.5 years. So definitely the calling grew stronger and stronger as I grew up. And like, let's do this. Let's move and finish school in Cyprus. And it was an amazing experience to be able to go to school and then go to the beach.
I wish I could say the same as well too. We didn't have that in Mississauga, but let's take a step back. I want to ask you though, because you mentioned that you did school in Cyprus and you also did school in Jordan. What were the education systems like? Was there a bit of shock when you went to go finish high school in Cyprus? Like, I don't want to say was one easier than the other, but how different were they?
you might be shocked by this, but actually, like, I found the education in Jordan much harder. And
I'm actually not shocked by that.
yeah,
N
very tough education system. It's rigorous. The qualification to universities are significantly more competition. So when I moved to Cyprus, I don't know how familiar the audience and the audiences is with this concept of GCE O levels and A levels, which is a British system. And as soon as I enrolled in the A levels and O level systems, it just opened up my eyes. I became much more interested in sciences. That was the key distinctive element. I was very interested in math growing up in Jordan, but as soon as I moved into English and only English, I became fascinated with science, biology specifically, and my interest really evolved and changed. So if I was to say, like, the difference is, we underestimate sometimes how languages can open different aspects of your brain and your thinking. And for me, that was biology when I moved. Are they different? They're fundamentally very different educational systems. But from what I took from it is the superpower of adaptability.
Okay, so let's take a step back one more time because you mentioned that expanded your interest in the sciences. So I ask everyone what their interests or hobbies were growing up, and we've got two interesting ones here. This is the first time that anyone has brought up biology and aviation. So sticking with the theme of the sciences, so biology, what was your attraction to it? And was this something that you found later in your child or teenage years when you started to take those science classes in English?
I think I I think this sounds really weird, Victor, or you might find this actually humorous. Um, the books is what played a difference. So the books were much more visual when I
Okay.
into a European system, and that opened up my eyes. And I realized I was really fascinated by this idea of the hidden ecosystem and this complex ecosystem in biology. And I'm a huge fan of David Attenborough. I could say I've watched every single
Mm.
series he's published, and the way he tackles and explains the storytelling aspect of how he tackles uh, biology, environment, animals, and so forth was really different and inspired me in many ways. So um, so biology definitely fascinating to this day. I think if I wasn't doing marketing, I'd be doing probably marine biology. And my fascination is with the ocean, the sea, but also with biology, and combining them would have been probably my second calling, if I may say.
So before we get to aviation, were you big into fishing in Cyprus? Because I had a chance to study alongside some marine biologists when I was in university. I wasn't in marine biology, but something that they all had in common, it didn't matter where they were from, they were big into fishing.
Yeah, in Cyprus, it's very common. So if you've ever been to a lot of Mediterranean islands, especially Greek islands, it's a very common like sight to be driving on the highway and seeing people off the highway just
Mhm.
fishing in the off the rail. Like literally, it's just very common. You go walk down the cliffs till you find the rock and you fish. It was definitely part of our uprising. Am I good? That's a whole different question. But I've definitely done a lot of it in Cyprus. Not say they're good at it. I can't say I've become really good at it.
Okay, so what about aviation though? Because this one's particularly interesting to me.
This is to do with my dad. My dad worked in the airline business
Oh,
for
okay.
20 plus years in Jordan at Royal Jordanian Airlines.
Was he an
Uh,
executive, a
yeah,
pilot?
yeah, executive,
Mm.
and fascinating. Spent a lot of my childhood on planes, traveled the world. Been to the office, been to the airport, accompanying him as much as possible where we can, and just we're fascinated by this idea of like you can put people up in the air and fly them. And what was really fascinating with aviation is the destination. Like that was something that was really interesting.
Mm.
Uh, the complexity of the machine was fascinating. So growing up, because my dad is an engineer, we not just myself, even my brother, we were very fascinated with this idea of like airplanes, airports, the logistics aspect of aviation, not just the plane, and developed a huge passion to this day. I love airplanes. I'd love We do sometimes take the kids to watch airplanes take off and
Hmm.
land at Pearson or wherever we can. So very the idea of aviation comes from my dad and his experience and his work.
Do you ever track specific planes and time your visits at Pearson to watch when they land? Because I know when Emirates flies in that, I don't know if it's a massive Airbus. I think it is. It's the really big Airbus. I do know that it does attract quite a crowd, especially early on when they were doing it. People were tracking those flights just so they could get a glimpse of it.
Yeah. Yes. I have friends who are very much avid into this, so they do help make it easier for me. The most fascinating plane out of Pearson to watch, in my view, is probably South Korea's cargo plane that takes off early in the morning, because it's the
Okay.
one that's color painted, really well painted and decorated. It's artistic. And that's probably my favorite plane to see take off and land out of
Out,
Pearson.
outside of the paint job, and it being a cargo plane, is there something a little bit more unique about it? Or is it just a standard Airbus or Boeing plane just outfitted for cargo rather than passengers?
It's the uniqueness aspect of the exterior, because the plane of obviously the planes that are most fascinating to watch are either some of the oldest model that are still operating,
Mm.
because you can't see them frequently. But a 737 exists everywhere, pretty much every airport in the world. You'll see 737s, you'll see Airbuses and so forth. Definitely the A380 is unique because it's the size. You're going for the size. You're not going for anything else that is quite appealing to a lot of people. And the wingspan, which is quite enormous. So uh, the other one would be military. Military planes are
Mm.
fascinating to watch.
Yes.
If you ever get a chance to watch a big plane take off, and we have an airport not far from Kingston in Ontario. So there's
Mhm.
also an air show in September that happens every year in Toronto. So there's a lot of opportunities to watch. I'd say military airplanes are very fascinating as well.
I guess the craziest one that I've seen was, do you remember when we're going back to, I wanna say 2010, maybe 2009? Remember when Canada or Toronto hosted, was it the G8 summit back then or the G10? And everything was kind of partially in lockdown. I was working at the CBC at that time, and they had sent Marine One, so the president's military helicopter, their military transport ahead of time, and it buzzed the building, and it was the most surreal thing I'd ever seen.
Helicopters is another one. I can't say I've become an expert or have watched a lot of them, but that's definitely also fascinating. Uh, that's probably the biggest helicopter I think that exists today. Is the model that they use is the biggest helicopter. So you're looking at something quite unique. Again, size plays a big factor into this stuff. But
Okay, one thing.
biology and aviation, and
Okay,
here
so
we are.
one quick thing about modern aviation that you spoke about, how it's fascinating that we can just get on this plane and be the other side of the world. A book I want to recommend for you, it's called I Know You've Got Soul by, are you familiar with Jeremy Clarkson, who used to host Top Gear? Yeah, Clarkson's Farm. This book's maybe about 10 or 15 years old, and every chapter is dedicated to a piece of engineering that has revolutionized the world. Everything from like the outboard motor right through to like the machine gun. But there's one part where he really goes into the fact that if you think about where we were in the late 1800s, we could barely get across the ocean without sinking a boat. And then all of a sudden, some 60, 70 years later, we're going to the moon. Like he really doubles down on the fact that there was this period of advancement in transportation that we don't talk about that hasn't really been seen since then. Good book. You got to check that one out.
I have it.
Oh, you've got it. You've read it?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
have read
Okay.
half of it, not the entire. Not the entire.
Oh,
It's definitely
you,
something I need to finish.
yeah.
Um, but fascinating book. Actually, if anything, you're reminding me, Victor. I'm gonna try to set
Pick
up some
that book
time
up.
to finish reading that book. Um, Great book, and he's the writing is really good in that as well.
He's an incredibly engaging writer. Like he knows how to hold your attention.
So I will definitely. I think technology has gone like it's what's fascinating over the last 40, 50 years. We're not realizing how far we've gone as humans compared
Hmm.
to the last 500 or 2000 years. So I've always sat down and I'm like, I don't know if I want to go into the future or if I want to go into the past. Like if anybody ever asked me that question right now, do
Mm.
I want to go into the future? If I can go back or forward, I'll probably go back to witness it versus going forward, because I just can't imagine where the future is going to be in 50 years, 100 years, or so. But it's something to be optimistic about in some ways. But
We're trying to be optimistic. It's hard when you read the news, but look, let's move on to the next question. So I always ask everyone who their biggest influences were, and you've mentioned your parents. Your dad, you already mentioned, was an engineer, and your mom was a pharmacist. So let's start first with your mom.
so, f- I mean, sometimes I am speechless in describing, but I think for me the story is she's a refugee. My mother is a refugee. My dad is as well. They're both refugees from very different wars, very different conflicts. Um, so to come as far as she has, get educated, become a pharmacist, but I think where it became really inspiring, and I've taken a lot from her, is later on in life, moving to the Middle East, learning Arabic fluently, which is a very tough language to learn, by the way.
Oh, it's a new
Even
alphabet you're learning. Like
it's a very
it's
different,
yeah.
very different. So, and the adversity, the culture shifts, the mentality. I think that's where I would say one of the most important traits that I think I have, but even my siblings have, is the adaptability of it. And it to us to this day, we're so thankful for it. So the adversity, being able to learn the culture was probably as hard as learning the language. I'm going to say, if you ever traveled the world, I love being able to be exposed to different cultures, but learning and living in culture is a whole different subset. And when people tell me who's my inspiration, it's very simple answer. I am here today because of the adversity that she taught us all. So, and my dad, um, I think the inspiration is very young age, being very successful in his career, but willing to put that on pause to immigrate to Canada and sacrifice. So we're basically, all the kids went to university. We all finished education. We were all well established in our careers. Um, and doing that when you're mid 40s, to leave everything behind and say we're
Mm.
going to rebuild, is quite is inspirational. Obviously for us, it's again resilience. So when I look at those sacrifices, I'm always every day I'm reminding myself of those sacrifices, and it's very much tied to my parents.
Do you think your dad being able to pack up the family and your mom moving to Canada when he was 40, do you think a lot of that goes back to him? I'm gonna bring it up in a bit of a roundabout way. It comes back to the fact that he lived life as a refugee and he was displaced. So the universe forced him to hit the reset button on his life very early on. And because he overcame that challenge successfully to build the life that he did, all of a sudden moving halfway around the world doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Like it's a big move, but it might not be as traumatic as it is for someone else who's always lived a very comfortable life in one location.
It definitely does. Most immigrants who There's a difference between immigrating countries when you're very young, and
Mm.
even though you're still first generation, but immigrating at a younger age versus a much more older age, established with a career, with a friend circle, with a social life, you're basically sacrificing way more, way more. You're making these conscious decisions to say the outcome and the output significantly outweighs what I'm leaving behind. That's a very tough decision, because you're leaving behind family, you're leaving behind friends, you're leaving behind jobs, stability.
Mhm.
Uh, if things don't go well, um, it's a much bigger risk. It actually, like, almost almost reminds me of um, something I used to do when I was a few years back, when when I used to do triathlons. And I remember my first experience in a triathlon. I was like, if you ever experienced a triathlon, Victor, you've seen those scenes where people start at the water and on the beach, and they run into the water. And I was very confident. I was like very cocky. I was like, I've been training for 2 years. I'm best shape of my life. And I positioned myself right in the middle of the pack. And I'm like, I'm going to run and I'm going to like really make a head strike, as they say. And within a minute, I got kicked in the face,
Oh.
lost my goggles, and I'm like, holy crap. Like so I swim towards one of the paddle boats where, you know, there's lifeguards and on these kayaks and surfboards. And they're there for like safety in case somebody drowns and so forth. And I just grab onto, I remember her leg, and I'm like, I lost my glasses, my goggles. She's like, okay. Waited about a minute for people to pass, for the wave to pass. And in my mind, I'm like, I think I'm going to quit. Like I'm ready to quit because I'm not going to swim another 2 kilometers. And in my mind, I'm like, everybody's going to understand. If I tell them I quit, even though I've been training for 2 years and my family had all come to see me and so forth, I think they would understand. And then she goes, okay, so what are you waiting for? Go. And I'm like, okay. So I started swimming again, like completely not even realizing it. And ended up really catching up and really making amazing catching up and amazing pace and so forth. Get out of the water, see my dad. And he's like, great job. And then completely forgot about the pain, the situation I was in. And this is how my dad has always said about life. Like sometimes you can go through the adversity, but just sometimes you need people to remind you that you can do it. They're not here to encourage you. They're just reminding you that you have the will to do it. And I remember going onto the biking path afterwards, and you do the 90-kilometer loop, and I got a penalty. So I was stopped for 2 minutes. I lost some time. I was very frustrated. And saw my wife and my mom, and they're like so happy, like they're like so excited, and they just reminds you again, okay, you question yourself, but you could do it. So question yourself a lot, but the people around you remind you that you can keep going, and that's pretty much the experience. I feel like this whole moving countries, you question it, but people remind you that you can do it, and then you push yourself. So ultimately you succeed.
Okay, so I had no idea you were a triathlete, though. So what made you train for your first triathlon? Like, what made you get into that sport?
It's one of the most inspiring things I've ever done. And I've realized a lot of people who do triathlon, they're going through something. They're like, they're trying to prove something. Or they're at a point in life where they're really trying to find themselves. That's what it was for me. I did my triathlon when I was like trying to find myself. I hit 30 and I was like, okay, but I'm not really sure what the next phase of my life is. And it was a way of breaking myself down because the training is rigorous. It was every day, 4 o'clock in the pool, every day for 2.5 hours training, getting into shape. It was meant to break you and rebuild you in a different way, but not just physically, but mentally. I enjoy that idea of breaking the body and seeing how far I could do it. And what got me into it is I did a marathon. I never even did a 5K, 10K, half marathon. I never done that. I was like, my first race, Ottawa, 42K. Let's go. And next race, 42K. I was like that was my training. It was like never, there was no build up. And I was like, okay, this is really fun. What's next? What's after 42K? Triathlons. It was like really exhilarating, this idea of finishing. And what's satisfying about the experience of racing is you do this for like 3 hours, and Ironman had this where you do this for like 5 hours, half an Ironman, and you hear people talking to themselves, and even you go through this experience and you're like almost questioning why you're even doing this. Like you're in pain, you're getting a cramp, you're tired, you're exhausted, and then you cross the finish line and you are like finished, and 10 minutes later you're like, I can't wait to do it again. And that high and low, and within a day you experience all sets of emotions, from frustration to excitement to adrenaline to happiness to sadness to questioning yourself, all in a single span of a day. To me, it was like, wow, this is really I was just kept me going.
Was this your first time dabbling in individual sport, or is that something you've always done, or were you more of a team sport guy at some point?
Um, I, I grew up in a community in Jordan and in Cyprus, so I never really did sports alone. It was always playing basketball, playing
Mm,
soccer on the street. Like that's actually how it is. Uh, and the first time I started dabbling in individual sports in Cyprus when I started going swimming on my own in the sea
mm,
in the morning. So I would, before going to school, I would go swimming. And I started really enjoying this idea of focus. And to the point where I was like, oh, this is my time. People would say, can I come and join you? I'm like, this is
mhm,
my time. This is
yeah,
my time for me to gather my thoughts, my time to collectively think and reflect. So, and that was probably the start of it. It's like, oh, individual sports, there's a role for this because you're on your own. Triathlons was quite interesting because you're really stretching it for like hours and hours at a time, and you're doing multiple sports all in one at once. But it gives you the ability to really go a bit deep in your thoughts.
mhm, I couldn't agree more. I mean, when you work out, do you usually go with buddies to the gym or do it at home alone? Like, when I was in university and we used to work out almost daily, I always tried to plan my workout times around my friends because I didn't wanna get lost for 90 minutes or 2 hours trying to share a machine or replicate what they were doing. I really wanted to stick to my own plan that was gonna help me.
Yeah, um, it's I would say for me, I was there was a period actually, Victor, in when I was in Montreal when I was doing some really heavy training. I was approached at the gym. This guy, his name is Costa, approached me. He's like, "Do you want to run with us?" And I had little clue that these people were like semi-pro. Uh, and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'll run with you." When they gave me a date and a time, and I connected with them. Um, but fascinating. They were semi-pro, like they had really done phenomenal. One of the guys running had won the Montreal half marathon twice, so
Mm,
they were really serious runners. But they didn't talk to each other. They were the
hmm,
role of the group was just to push each other and pace, challenge, come up with routes to go. So it was a nice balance between people focusing on their own individual performance, but doing it collectively in their as well. And so many people would be asked to invite, and they never be taken off the list because they would talk too much, or or
oh, nice.
they would just distract. So like it was like selective, half a dozen people consistently, but they would invite others, and you could tell the chemistry was not right, and they would just never be invited again because either they talk too much or they distract you. So there's room for collective training together, and there's room for like just individual thought. Let me try to get through it. And I find myself today, even professionally, a lot of the time, um, there's time to ideate, discuss, and there's a lot of time to just, if you want to get deep into it, to just have that individual focus. Um, it's very reminiscent, like very reflective of how the working environment works today, from at least how I like to work as well.
Okay, so we've already touched on your move to Montreal, but let's go into a little bit more detail there because you wrapped high school in Cyprus. You moved to Montreal where you did university. So, but the first question I want to ask is you touched down in Montreal, especially after splitting your time between Jordan and Cyprus, where the weather is beautiful. You're in Montreal dealing with, can we say this is the first time you're truly dealing with four seasons?
Oh yeah, hands down, for sure.
Okay. And you pick one of the more extreme cities to do that. Was there any sort of culture shock when you landed in Montreal? Or because Jordan and Cyprus were so completely different and you'd already traveled the world, there wasn't much of any culture shock when you did land in Canada?
You know, I've said this story a few times, especially when like sometimes I'll go speak at colleges and universities and so forth. And when I landed in Montreal, I mean, when we first did our landing, it was February, so it was like
Oh,
very cold.
God.
I was like, why? Why is the question we were asking ourselves? Are you sure? I remember buying the heaviest coat that I could find, and it was nothing. It was like a bad joke. So, uh,
Jesus.
yeah, I'm pretty sure my fingers froze, and almost got myself some frostbites as well. But Um, there's something fascinating when I came to. I mean, I was 16 when I landed. I was just going to turn 17 like 4 or 5 months later. So I landed in June. My birthday's in October, so I was still kind of technically 16 years old. So my first instinct was to join like some Arabic association, some Greek association at university. But I felt myself like I traveled the entire world pretty much. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable here. Like, I don't feel
Mm.
comfortable in joining the Arabic association, or joining a Greek association. And I remember very clearly, vividly, Victor, walking into the International Student Association. I remember vividly walking into that room and seeing Nahida from Lebanon, Triffin from Switzerland, Asya from India, Peter from Hungary, and I can name them, Mitten from Turkey, because we were still very close friends, Adudu from Togo, Kofi from Ghana. Like, I remember the group very well. We're still friends. And I was like, I'm home. I'm finally home. It's
Mm.
because it's always been instilled in me, like I'm looking for adaptability. I'm looking for differences. I'm not looking for more of the same. I'm constantly looking for something very different. And that crew, that mix of people coming from all around the world, was, after 4 months in Canada, I was like, oh my God, it's far and so forth. That was the instant where I was like, this is amazing. That was like perfect.
And that would be your key to integration then? Because I
Yeah.
imagine when you speak at the colleges, you're speaking to a lot of international students as well too.
Yeah. And there's a fundamental, when you look at the data, you look at the statistics, it's easy, even though there's more diversity, as a percentage of the students. But actually, when you look at the statistically, you realize actually they're still within 4 or 5 key clusters. And because that diversity is 4 key clusters, that can create like almost like this idea of like separation or
Mm.
isolation, because you could just integrate with that group of people, and that group of people. Um, so even though the percentage of like international students or people coming into the school are from different backgrounds, the variety is actually not as much as you think. So what I always like to emphasize is, don't focus on just joining one community and trying to make it easy for you. The most beautiful thing of going to university is the diversity at the cultural level. So look for a lot of different views. And for me, the International Student Association just did it. So it was just such an amazing experience. Probably spent too much time and not enough time in class, but definitely memorable years.
But you seem to do well. So let's double down on that a little bit. Why did you pick Concordia University? And why did you choose to study business? Or was it accounting, right? It was accounting, or was it a business degree with a
Yeah, I
focus on
studied.
accounting?
Yeah, it's a so. I mean, the truth is, I was 16 years old. Was I felt like I have done the A levels and O levels, and the college in Montreal and in Quebec, the system is a bit different.
Hmm.
After you finish high school, you go into what's called CEGEP, which is a 2-year college program, sometimes 3, depending on what you're studying, and it's like a bridge between high school and university. And when I landed, I was like, okay, I did my O levels and I did my A levels. I finished very young, by the way, both, but I was not sure that I was going to be accepted in university, even though I had the qualifications to go. So I went to Vanier, which is a college in Montreal, and I was there for about 3 weeks in August. And I was like, oh my God, I'm doing all of this again. Like, I was
Hmm.
doing all the same thing. Like, in my first 3 weeks, I was like, I've done Catalyst, I've done this, I've done these courses before. I just finished them and I'm just repeating myself. Um, so I applied to Concordia. I was telling my dad, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this again. Like, it doesn't make sense. So my dad is like, okay, let's apply to universities. Started applying to universities and got accepted in a couple, but Concordia was the most convenient. So I took and was the first one to reply. And I didn't want to risk waiting. I had the grades. I had really good grades coming out of high school. So I was like very confident I probably can be accepted in other universities. But my age was a concern. I was 16. I was not even allowed to
Mm.
drink. which is another story. But but as soon as Concordia accepted me, I'm like, okay, I'm quitting college. I'm going straight into university. Thank God. So I was 16 when I entered into university. Accounting, well, interesting. I think business is a principle. I think numbers is very important. Is a very important aspect of life to understand really, really well. And when I did my A levels and O levels at 14 and 15, I was doing accounting or as well. Like that was part of my curriculum, and I really loved it and excelled in it. So I was like, this is the easiest thing. I want to be in business. I want to have a bit of the freedom. And getting into business school is a bit easier than getting into biology or getting into the other departments. But my intention was, I'll do 1 year of business school and then determine if I'm going to pivot. And once you're in the program, and once you're part of the university or the institution, it's a bit easier depending on your grades to pivot departments. But I really enjoyed it. I was like, this is really fun. Accounting is really it gives you a lot of flexibility. It was a lot of theory. For me, it was a lot of numbers, and I studied also then marketing as well. And I pivoted. I was like, I really love these creative aspects and problem solving element, and stuck to it. So finished with accounting and marketing as a degree.
And then after you graduated from Concordia, you jumped right into the co-founder space. So take us through what V12 software was, because this is a big entrepreneurial leap. Was this something that had been, I guess, marinating while you were in university, or was this an idea that was presented to you or that you came up with after graduation?
Yeah, my very good friend Peter Kovac, and he's a very entrepreneurial person, like somebody that you never picture in a corporate world. And he approaches me and he goes, Basil, I met someone and we're going to start a startup. And this is like 2003. So I just want to give you context. You talk about V12, but there's so much other things that we did. So we've done so much before we even reached V12. I talk a lot about successes, but I also I talk about the failures we had as much, because I think I've learned even more. We started a campus listing website in 2003 in Montreal.
Okay.
And we've reached 12,000 students registered on it. Like it was like almost like the first Facebook, but it wasn't Facebook. It was like a bit of an elevated Friendster, if you remember back then.
Vaguely remember Friendster, yeah.
So it was a bit of that. It was like a bridge between Friendster and High Five. Nobody watching this will probably know what either of those are, but those were like the initial social networks that really blossomed. And we did well, but the investor that we had on board, SAD, was constantly pushing us to figure out a better commercial model. The commercial models back then were not really clear for a campus university listing website. And we're like, but we think we have something. We have traction. We have people registering. We did some really guerrilla marketing. I remember one thing, Victor, like that was my first foray into marketing. I had gone to all the computer labs. Now, back in the day, people didn't have laptops. They had to do work. They had to go into a computer lab. And I went into all the computer labs, Concordia, McGill, HEC, UQAM. I went to all the universities in Montreal, and I changed the homepage on all the to the listing website. That's how I got traction. It was a bit of a guerrilla.
Awesome. So wait a minute. I can see how you could do this as a Concordia student, but as a McGill student, you don't have a student card or a student number. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I'll be like, let's go to which labs do you have? And we have the engineering lab. Perfect. Can you take me? And they would sign up to this lab, this computer, this computer, this computer, this computer, this computer, this computer, and I would change the homepage from Yahoo back then or whatever, or the university, whatever they had, to our listing website. And I did that for every single lab I was able to access across Montreal, and that's why we had 12,000 members. It was a bit of guerrilla, a bit of rebellious, because you had to go back and constantly, like I think would last maybe a few days before they caught on, but then I'll go back and constantly change it.
But the attribution must have been interesting. Like if you had spent the weekend at McGill, did you start to notice like come Tuesday, all of a sudden you're starting to get a lot of McGill students signing up?
Yeah, we're talking about 2003, so we were like, oh, what is this? And they would register, and we had some really good traction. I have a couple of stories like that, like guerrilla marketing that we did that was quite fun back then. I don't know if you can get away with it today, but uh, and but then slowly it was like, okay, but what is the commercial? Like, how do we stalled a bit after we've done Montreal. Like, he's like, and the joke was, am I gonna go now to Ottawa and go to Toronto and live there for a
Mm,
week and change all the all the screens? Actually, I started calling students that I have, and through the International Association, I made a lot of friends from different universities all across Canada. So I would be calling them like, guys, can you do me a favor? Can you go in your lab, in the computer lab, and can you please change the homepage to this? And I'd be calling them like constantly, all my friends. And it was like the weirdest request, but I was like, it's not scalable. So we ended up pivoting to like a car listing, a used car listing website,
mm,
and then realized there was a business opportunity for all the used car dealers where you can just sign up. It was like the first foray into SaaS, you could say, or because then if you had a dealership, you didn't have a website, then you can now, instead of manually posting all your used cars separately on Kijiji or eBay or Craigslist or whatever that existed back then, we created a platform that allows you to just upload all your inventory and press a button, and automatically it will populate and push all your listings to Yahoo Autos, eBay, um, Craigslist, and all the other ones that existed. And that became a much more viable commercial model. And that's when V12 was born.
So where did the idea come from to pivot into used cars? Like, where did you see that opportunity? Because that's a massive pivot from like students to that.
It's actually driven purely by our, like, we had a third partner as well, and he pretty much led a lot of it, and significantly older, significantly more experience, had a lot of automotive dealers as well. He was in the auto business, and he's like, okay, instead of financing these students, and we had moved to LA to live with him as well.
Mm,
He goes, instead of financing these two boys out of Montreal with this crazy guerrilla marketing tactic, and it was like really fun, and we got a lot of freedom and so forth. He's like, we need something a bit more tangible, so definitely made sense for us to. Uh, he knew the industry really well. We came up with the concept of how do we simplify the operations of a used car dealer. And back then, not every dealership had a website. Today, you think we're
mhm.
talking about 25, 22 years ago. So
Yeah.
today, you'd like think it's very common sense to have a website, but back then it wasn't. So it made a lot of sense, and they grew really well. They grew exceptionally fast, especially between 2010 to 2015. I had exited by then, but
So after that venture ended, was there at any point where you thought, okay, I'm going to jump back into accounting? Because that's what I had gone to school for. That's what I had graduated with. Like, were you looking at possibly re-enrolling and getting your designation, whether it be CPA, CGA, CA?
back then it was if I was going to do one, it was going to be the CMA. And
Mm,
but actually no, I was just so fascinated by this idea of like marketing and data and customer acquisition, and just like this concept of like culture and society, and figure out how to leverage culture and society to drive media, to drive creative, to drive transaction, to drive loyalty. I was just like really interested in this spectrum, or these concentric circles, that I could not go back into an Excel spreadsheet per se, even though accounting is even though marketing today is a lot of numbers, and a lot of what I do is data and analytics and number
mhm,
driven. But the concept, but it's different than accounting. And I think that said, the accounting background has really helped me in my career a lot, and it's giving me better ability to um, manage budgets, understand forecasting, running a team, or working within an organization. I think the accounting competency has actually helped me a lot. But I like the balance that I have right now. I'm not a Excel spreadsheet balancing P&Ls and producing financial audits. I'm more focused on what I like to do, which is a bit of freedom, marketing and so forth.
okay, so your next role at Media Traffic, talk to me how you found that one, because you were their senior digital media buyer and their team lead. But something I wanted to ask you before you jump into that, you had just spent some time as an entrepreneur, essentially as your own boss, even though you did have some people you had to answer to. Was it difficult going into a job and reporting into someone else and not having that level of control at a senior level that you did in the or that much freedom or that much creativity to pivot and do certain things? as, say, your previous role?
Yeah, well, it was a decision. It was a kind of, I would say, I was pushed into that decision because after the exit, I was going to travel the world. I was actually planning to go to the Middle East.
Mm,
I was
okay.
planning to take a year off, and I was able to, which is very unusual for someone my age to be able to say, I can actually take a year off and not have to work, and travel the world and so forth. But my parents were like, "Ma, what are you doing?" So get a job. So they gave me some really fantastic advice. I bought a condo. Uh, I was able to have a place to live, and I was like, okay, maybe I'm ready to go to the market, but I want something in marketing, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet in marketing. So media traffic gave me that ability to kind of find a niche within, which was media buying and optimizing. And I was able to use my operational background, my love for numbers, in this idea of like, how do we build a network? And that's what we did at Media Traffic. We built a network, uh, and managing budgets, managing media, figuring out how to work with publishers. And it created even another fascination. And I think I mentioned this even at the CMA, where I decided to like venture into the fraud and programmatic media buying back then, or
Mm.
bidding. I was like really fascinated by this space of like, and the reason I discovered it is because I was doing it every day. I was working with publishers, and I was working with optimizing media placements and negotiating. And back then it was a bit of a mix of both. You did some bidding, but also you negotiated directly with publishers. And because of my interest in always, I said biology, aviation, like finding how things work, I became very fascinated with like, well, how does this media landscape work? Some things make sense and some things don't make sense. And media traffic gave me that space. I was able to like really venture into the fraud space, understand the ecosystem, the back end of it, how people buy, how impressions transact, how to optimize placements, and really, really excelled. Loved that team that I worked with. Got to travel the world a lot. Something maybe uh, I wouldn't want to do today, travel the world, but back then, literally from Europe to a lot of different cities all across the US as well. And allowed me to do multiple things, feed different passions at the same time, which was really fun.
And this was one of the very first independent DSPs, and is it safe to
Yeah.
say that this is at the beginning of programmatic?
Yeah, very much. It was
Would you
we had programming teams, engineers, and we developed our first, it was very, like, we're talking about 2008. So,
Yeah.
definitely at the infancy of like programmatic real time bidding. That was
Mhm.
one of the first, in Canada for sure.
Do you look back at that and go, "I didn't realize it at the time," or maybe you did, but I had the opportunity to shape technology at the ground floor that was basically going to encompass the entire industry in the next 15, 20 years?
I mean, I would say looking back, I could say that. Back then, it was like, how do we make more money? How do we
Mhm.
build better relationships? It was like, what I found fascinating about technology, especially the marketing spaces, as well, is like we always try to push things to the boundaries. We, as much as we can, till we regulate and govern and create governance and policies around this. So it was a bit of a wild west, Victor. A lot of wild west there. Like, how do we, and I found that really interesting and exciting. Obviously, looking back, saying, well, thinking of buying advertising this way, creating an ecosystem where you can maximize your returns by allowing people to bid dynamically for each impression, when needed, or each placement. We started with placements, and then it was impressions, and it was then audiences, and it grew, and it just evolved from there. Yeah, definitely fascinating. It gives you either have a lot of white hair, and I've been in the industry for too long, but definitely I don't think I look at it as like shaping the industry. But today, I could tell you that I'm always passionate. Like, how do I push the industry forward? How do we move the industry forward in a way that is, um, done in a sustainable way, in a way that is compliant? How do we build the right policies and so forth? Because I've seen the chaos. Maybe I've seen the chaos. I've seen the Wild West, and now I'm very much like, how do we put rules and guidelines to do this better? So
But it sounds like you thrive in that chaos. Like it gives you the space that you need to make something special. And then obviously, like you said, you'd rein yourself back in. Like one of the things that came to mind when you called it the Wild West, and that fact that that facet of the industry was still in its infancy was how there are, because there were fewer guardrails, kind of like how there are certain facets of the medical industry that have moved their research to, say, the Caribbean or the Middle East, where there are fewer guardrails because they feel that they can advance their research a lot better than being stuck with all the bureaucracy that comes with being in, say, Canada or the United States.
For do I thrive with being in the Wild West? I think a lot of us do. So for me, it's the part of maybe the way I work and my brain is I like to make sense of chaos. I like to make sense of something that is a bit more complex. Doesn't mean I'm always able to. Like, there's an interesting concept in science. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of emergence, Victor.
Not at all. Science was not my
No,
strength.
no, okay. Like it's a concept that Kepler, and if you know Kepler, he was a famous scientist. There's a lot of astronomical, I think there's a telescope named after him as well and so forth. But there was a fascinating experience where he was walking on a bridge in Prague, and uh, as it was snowing, he basically was asking, like, why is all the snow flakes look exactly the same? Like, we understand how snowflakes happen because of the change in temperatures, but why is it that they're so symmetrical? And that's the concept of emergence, is very much on this idea that you can spend all your life studying a bird, dissecting it, understanding every single bone, every single muscle, its digestive system, its respiratory system, its legs, and so forth. But even if you do that and spend all your life studying a bird in that manner, you will never understand or learn how it flies in a flock. And the concept
Mm.
of emergence is there's always complexities to things. And I think I look at marketing today as you could spend all your time looking at GTM or understanding the Google marketing stack or understanding the loyalty stack or your experience stack. But do we understand how the whole ecosystem actually works? And do we have an understanding of why things happen the way it does? My fascination is like, well, I'm never going to be able to answer why these two protein molecules came together and formed the cell, and why these two cells are communicating with each other. But I can try to at least develop some sort of analysis that this is what's happening, and I try to always like break it down with this approach, and I just find marketing has a lot of that. I don't know if this is obviously kosher to say, but I joked around once and I said, like, when I think of the big tech providers, their job is to make you forget how to acquire your next customer. And the whole
Mm.
principle about it is like, well, no, I want to know how I want to acquire my next customer. I want to understand the intricacies of acquiring a customer. I don't just want to put money in a box and let it run and hope AI does its job. And it does a good job. I'm not going to lie about this, but I don't want to do that. I'm not interested in forgetting about how to acquire a customer. I actually want to understand the mechanics of acquiring a customer, from the insights to the media buying engine, to the creative dynamics, to how people click, to how people then interpret and how people perceive. I like that process. So a lot of so do I like the Wild West? Yes, I do. I like the Wild West, but I also like to structure it. That's why I like the Wild West.
So, what brought you to Blick, and what did your role as director of digital performance entail? And was this job in Toronto?
That was my first job in Toronto.
This is your first job in Toronto?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was
So, yeah.
uh,
So, did you move to Toronto to get the job, or did the job pull you to Toronto?
the job pulled me to Toronto, and met this
Okay.
gentleman, mentor to me to this day, Kevin Astold. He's been in the agency space in Toronto for a long time. He's one of the founders of the Marketing Shop that I think got acquired by WPP. So quite a well-renowned agency in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s as well. And had it was a fascinating. I was at a conference in Barcelona. This is like how my life has been. I joke around. I don't do interviews. Usually I just meet people, and that's how I find my next opportunity. But at the mobile conference in Barcelona, I run into an event, and I end up conversing with one of the Nokia founders at this event.
Oh, okay.
And we've connected. We spoke on LinkedIn. We formed a really interesting relationship. He's a much older guy, but very smart, very wise. And when what he did years on, this is like years later on, he created he licensed the ability to create advertising and messaging apps, like BlackBerry is messaging app. And because BlackBerry was based here in Toronto, in Guelph, and Kitchener, he also knew Kevin Astle and Eric Kipp, who they started this venture called Blick. And they would like to start reaching out to agencies and partners and brands to be able to actually start bringing this notion of advertising within BlackBerry Messenger. And they're like, okay, we need to figure out who to bring in Toronto. And he's like, I know Basil. I was like, so when I got this introduction, it was like, I've been wanting to go to Toronto. I always thought Toronto is where I should be as well. And I love the city. I think we have this notion in Montreal that Toronto is a bit big city and no spice, but Toronto is a phenomenal city, I believe, as well. Amazing.
So that's what they say in Montreal?
Yeah, they do. It's a hockey rivalry. I think it's a confusion. The hockey makes you criticize the city more, but it's a rivalry. But ended up speaking to Kevin Astle and Eric Kipp at that moment, who really connected with. I'm like, I'm in, and moved to Toronto. And the role was quite interesting. It was like licensing, which was very new to me. I was like, okay, so we had to go to BlackBerry, and we had to work with some other messaging apps that existed, like secondary market, TikTok. There was others. There was a Korean messaging app. So we did a lot of licensing with these messaging apps, and we basically inserted these scripts that would allow us to serve ads as sponsored chats. And it was very revolutionary back then. We worked with Coca-Cola on the World Cup. And we worked with a lot of spirits and beverage industry as well. And within a year and a half, the decision was like, hey, we got an offer to merge with a DSP out of Toronto. We're going to sell all the licenses to them. And I was like, not really sure if it was the right decision. So I took a step back. I'm like, well, I had equity in this business, and this would give. I wanted to see it more. I thought there was a lot of opportunity to grow and turn it into something really unique and create unique inventory as well. And I had a vision of idea of like maybe forming partnership with third-party apps that nobody really optimizes for, and so forth. But anyways, we made it was an executive decision. We ended up exercising our equity, sold, got acquired, and was thinking, okay, like I moved to Toronto. I don't want to go back. I want to stay here in Toronto. And a good friend of mine introduced me to Annette and Guillaume, who were running iProspect and Dentsu at Toronto. And I ended up joining that team. It was like a year after they had acquired an agency out of Montreal, and they were looking to like really expand the performance marketing offering across the rest of Canada, because the agency was predominantly in Quebec. And it was a phenomenal journey. But that's my journey to Toronto and why I moved to Toronto.
Okay, so let's take one step back and talk about Blick for a second. You had mentioned that you had the exit from the company. Did it take a bit of time to find the motivation to move forward? Because you'd said leading up to the acquisition, you had all these ideas about the different direction you could take the company, all these opportunities and possibilities you saw. And then all of a sudden that exit happens and it puts everything on hold. So did you have to like dig down to find the motivation for that next opportunity? Or did you find that you were a little bit more careful with whatever that next opportunity was?
So, I mean, when I look back, because now I look back then it was like, maybe I felt like I was young, and I'm like, when you're younger, you're much more optimistic. So I know why the decision was made, and I benefited from it, right? So, but I know in hindsight, there's this idea of like the landscape is changing, iPhones are becoming abundant, Android is launched and is becoming abundant, and the messaging app space is really evolving. Obviously, today you could tell the messaging app industry. I mean, when Facebook acquired WhatsApp for so many billions, it was like this was
Mm.
definitely the space to be. But I was definitely understood the decision and started to and reflected back, and I was like, no, it's the right decision in hindsight. If it was up to me, I would probably have stayed and done and pushed through and innovated from tried to innovate and evolve and sign more licenses and so forth. But I had the energy. I don't think everybody else had that energy to do it, and I think it was ultimately the right decision. But I like persevering
And
through it. I would have done that.
and you end up and you end up at iProspect now. Is this your first job at a big major international holdco?
Yeah.
What was it like navigating those waters? Because I've heard from some people that apart from the wonderful opportunity you get, there can be a little bit of bureaucracy. And if you've come from some of the smaller agencies like you have, you don't have the flexibility to navigate the waters the same way you would within a smaller agency or to deal with problems head on.
Yeah. I mean, there's always bureaucracy everywhere you go. What matters when you're part of a big agency is the people closest to you, that small circle that you have, the people that you work with, your boss, your colleagues, and your team. And we had a fantastic team. Like, it was really amazing. And when I joined, it was an amazing time at that to be part of the holding co because we were on an upward trajectory. There was a lot of
Mm.
digital marketing was like at the forefront, and I don't know if I'm right, but we always had something new. Like, I think when I joined, it was all about mobile marketing, right? So there was
Mhm.
always something that was really new, and that's what I really like about marketing is there's always something happening that is really pushing the industry forward. So to go back to your question, is there bureaucracy? There is. The most important, you can't avoid it, which is why your immediate team, your closest circle, is so vital because they're the people you're engaging with every day, and you deal with it together. You manage through clients together, through adversity, through politics, and you work together with that, and that's really important. So uh, bureaucracy became part of it, but for us, it was such an amazing experience, such great friendship that we've developed. It was fun. It was exciting.
As you started to climb the ladder at iProspect, you get into these senior roles. And one of the questions I ask of all my guests when they start to climb is that does it become hard to hold on to some of the things that were fun about your previous job? Because as you start to move up and become less of a player and more of a coach, it becomes more about spreadsheets, the P&L, HR, headcount, and just using sales from that perspective. I know a lot of people that make the jump to like sales leadership, VP sales, and they miss the thrill of the hunt. They miss interacting with clients as much as they do, solving their problems, closing deals, getting their name on the contract. And they sometimes have a bit of withdrawal and they don't last in leadership. They have to go back. It sounds like you have a lot of fun getting your hands dirty with a lot of the new things that are coming up in the industry. Did you find that you had to work extra hard to ensure that you were still at the table and not so far removed as a leader or a manager?
Yeah, I don't know if you climb. We'll have to revisit this one. I don't know if you climb the ladder in an agency. I think it's just open door. You go. Oh,
Interesting. Okay.
the concept of climbing the ladder to me is a bit of like maybe uh, 2000 early 2000s, but it's much more flat. So, but I would understand the concept, the premise of the question. Uh, there's two types of leaders. There's leaders who are very hands on, and there's people managers.
Mm,
So I find myself to be much more hands on and lead with the team being on the ground. So if I had the option, which I always do, I'd want to sit with the team. I don't want to sit in an office. I would never want that. And and the beauty is sometimes as you do rise in an organization or your profile increases in an organization, you can make that decision. You can say, okay,
mm,
I'm still going to be in the weeds. Why? Because I was having this meeting with my team the other day, and we're like, Basil, sometimes we don't have time for innovation. Uh, and I remember, like, innovation doesn't happen in silo. It happens when you're actually in it, and and innovation should not be the
mm.
next thing that I've never heard of. It happens out of pain and learnings that you're experiencing in the day-to-day job. And you try to innovate within that box, within that framework of like, how can I do this better? Or what problems can we solve? Because we've heard five challenges that a client just posed to us that their business is suffering from. Well, you innovate within those. So it doesn't have to be an isolated silo lab that you sit in and experiment and mix potions together and put technologies and wiring together to try to build something that new. You're innovating when you're in the ground. And then for me working in an agency, I remember very closely, and we used to say this with my bosses, like new business pitches is an opportunity to innovate. It's the ability to think differently about a problem. And to this day, I still think that is true. So I definitely don't like to be completely disassociated from the day to day, because I I find it so inspiring working with some really smart people and solving through these complex problems. And that's where innovation comes. That's the heart of what we do. The rest, just got to learn how to manage it and deal with it and do the reforecast and do all the budgets, as they say, and doing the paperwork, the evaluations, the raises, the vacation management, organizing, figuring out office space and all that stuff. Operationally, fine. Like I find that really easy. The fun part is more how do we build and position our team and the amazing team that we have in a way that really gives us an advantage and gives the clients and solves the client's problem.
So your next move to Post Media, this is first and foremost a legacy media brand. They're heavily rooted in print, although they do have an expanding digital footprint across their publications. Making the move from say where you were at iProspect, where you had all of these opportunities, you could speak to all these different vendors and find these creative solutions for your clients. Moving publisher side, did you look at that as a challenge? Like when that was presented to you, did you say, okay, here is a real opportunity for me to flex my muscles? Working with a legacy publisher that's trying to increase its digital footprint, also trying to increase its digital innovation. Is this a chance for me to take the culmination of everything that I've been doing and put that to work into something that, into basically a platform or brands that I don't want to say anyone wrote off Postmedia, but largely the industry will write off anyone that's really heavily rooted within legacy platforms.
Mm. Wow. If there was one challenge, I mean, publishing is definitely a tough industry to be in.
Very much so,
Very,
yeah.
very tough. The challenge was absolutely worth it. I always like to say I joined for the right reasons and I left for the right reasons. Uh, but the challenge was hard for me to say no to. It was at a time where publishers became to realize that data is not their advantage, but experience. So news is abundant. It was available. You could just Google something and you got 5 different publishers with the titles and subtitles. So publishers have been going through this interesting, turbulent time to realize the data and the journalism wasn't the distinctive advantage. It was the experience. Obviously, journalism is very important. But from a convincing consumers to pay serves another challenge. So that was like, how do we solve this? And Canada was very much ripe for that type of disruption. And phenomenal team. That's what's really inspiring sometimes, Victor, is there's an amazing group of talent solving this problem day in and day out, and they're still working there, and they're trying to figure out how do they change the media landscape, but also how do you create a better experience for Canadians when they want to read the news. But there's no doubt it's a tough industry. I think the proposition around publishing has changed. The loss of local news have changed a bit the landscape in Canada, and it's just a different landscape. So definitely happy I took the challenge. I had an amazing support from my team working there. And when NPD called and my ex-colleagues who I used to work with at our prospect said, we have an amazing opportunity for us to expand and build an agency in Canada the way we wanted, I can't say no to that opportunity, and shifted from there.
And that was a ground floor opportunity. Like, let's talk about that. NP Digital is, like you said, a world renowned agency, but you had the opportunity to be one of the first hires in Canada.
Yeah, I think it was number like 6 or 5, and it was very much ground operation. So it was about figuring out how to like win business. Like literally, my first week, I remember like my job was just to talk to new prospects because we
Mm,
had this amazing pipeline at NP Digital where we had all these people who were interested in working with us, but we didn't have anybody to take the calls and manage with it. And so it was doing something I haven't done in a while for like 2 years while I was at Post Media was like speak to the market, speak to the business owners, the marketing CMOs, the founders, and the operators and say like, okay, what are your problems? And realizing that there's so much that we can solve for. So I was number 5 back then. I think now we're 54 people, 4 years in.
wow. Okay. That's
So
quite the leap.
it really grown the team significantly. Amazing group of people from our management team to our entire paid media, SEO, UX, DAI. Like we have a whole suite creative agency and a creative team.
Mm.
We've really expanded our merit of services, and it's fascinating because AI is changing a lot of what we do. So, um, so it's a very different shift from publishing. I think it was the right move. Very different space, and I feel more at home.
It sounds like your superpower is curiosity.
I don't know if it's a superpower because
I'd say it's a
sometimes
superpower. Like
it's
you're very curious about a lot of the stuff you're talking about. Like you can see even when we talk in our CMA calls, our ad tech committee calls, you can see when you're presenting something that you are genuinely excited about what it is you have to share.
um, my curiosity. I think my son has the same characteristic, so I see it. I see it in him all the time. You can't. I think actually the way I would frame it to Victor is if you're not curious, I don't know how you'll be able to progress in our industry
Hmm.
because I can say this, I know less about marketing today than I did yesterday because there's been 10 other things that happened today that I haven't even caught on.
Completely agree.
So, um, so to be able to be able to progress, you need that sense of curiosity that you can't just rely on the same tools, the same toolbox that you've had before, and you need to innovate. And like there's so many things that we talk about at the CMA committee, but if I was to categorize one thing about me, I would say curiosity is definitely up there. Sometimes it can get you in trouble.
It can get you in trouble, but it's a good kind of trouble.
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
definitely the type of person that breaks things and then puts them together. That's just my nature. So I like to figure out how they work so that I can then uh, uh, start to evaluate where do they fit in the ecosystem, and it's reflective of a lot of the things that I've done in my thesis studies, in my schooling, in my jobs, is in my personal health. When I said like Iron Man, break your body, then reconstruct it the way you want it. I've followed that same model. It's reflected. If you go back, it's probably very much reminiscent of how I operate as well. Break it and then rebuild it better. So
Basil, if anyone watching or listening to this wants to learn more about what you're up to at NP Digital, what's the best way they can follow?
email is the best way. I'm not a big social
Uh,
media guy, so I don't have an Instagram. I don't have a TikTok. I don't have a YouTube channel.
And, and
Maybe,
your mental health is a lot better for it.
probably. Uh, but if there's anything, I've done this, Victor, about when COVID hit and we were all like locked up for months at a time, if not like 6 months, I remember. And then
Mm.
when the rules started to be more flexible, I started going on these coffee chats every week. And every week I would go out, meet someone for a coffee, and then I would ask them to introduce me to somebody net new, and I would schedule another coffee and so forth. So
That's a good way of doing it.
um, so if I always like to say, like, I'm always interested in meeting people, forming connections. Email is the best way. Basil@mpdigital.com.
There we go. And we've also got it at the bottom of the screen there if you're watching this on YouTube. Look, Basil, this has been a fantastic chat. You've been very generous with your time. Are you ready for rapid fire questions?
No, but let's go.
All right. The body of work or campaign you're most proud of?
So in 2002, I created an ad for Dell that won an award at the university, and it was tagline "Easy as Dell," which everybody would have remembered was Dell's tagline. I didn't create the tagline, but I created an ad that basically had someone walk into what appeared like a fast food joint, and instead of ordering fries and hamburgers, they were like, "I'll have a PC, I'll have it with 32 RAM." And the lady would like, "Do you want to upgrade that to 64? Upgrade, yes. I'll take it with a monitor." And then she goes, "For here or to go?" And he goes, "To go." And she hands him a Dell laptop. And that won an award. And I'm like, that's probably the only time I tried to be creative. But it was then easy as Dell. Like, you can order it on, and the whole concept is you can buy a Dell online. So that was really my only foray of anything creative.
Back when RAM was measured in megabytes, not gigabytes.
Yeah.
Okay, your favorite
A lot of
movie?
what we talked about, like I said on this call, like half people won't even know what I'm referring to.
Oh, computer labs where they probably had little
Yeah.
towers, or maybe
Yeah.
it was sitting underneath the monitor and the monitor was a projection monitor,
right.
not a flat screen. No, I'm right there with you, man. I did university in the early 2000s as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so your favorite movie?
Independence Day.
Great movie. Oh, the
First
sequel should have never
first
been
movie I ever
envisioned.
watched in theater.
Really?
Yeah.
If Hollywood were to make a movie based on your life story, who would you want to play you?
I don't Dwayne Johnson.
All
Somebody who
right.
doesn't look like me at all. Much more muscular,
Okay.
much more bigger than me. So, and The Rock.
All right. So my follow-up, if Hollywood were to make this movie based on your life story, what would you call it?
Ooh. I would give it a very, very silly name. And I would call it my favorite dish, moussaka, which is a mix of meat, pasta, and dairy. It's a Greek dish.
Your favorite book?
I have a lot, and I've given you. I think I've given some, but I'm gonna change it because the one that really I would say I read a lot is called Seven Powers by Hamilton Hemler. It's a book I read every Christmas, and it's a strategy book.
Your favorite song?
Fall at Your Feet by Jesse Cook.
The best advice you've ever received?
Don't stop.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self advice, what would you say?
You're blessed.
My signature closing question, if you weren't in media marketing, what would you be doing and why?
Saving the ocean.
And we're going to end things right here. Basil, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me, Victor.